Picture Messina, Sicily, October 1347. The port bustles until 12 Genoese ships arrive, carrying not riches, but death. Instead of joyful reunions, the townspeople find sailors dead or dying, bodies marked by black, oozing swellings. The authorities panic, banishing the ships, but the plague has already landed. The Black Death, the deadliest plague in history, has arrived in Europe. This was no ordinary enemy, an invisible killer spreading silently. Rumors of a distant pestilence had reached Europe, but now horror was at their doorstep. The disease ignored borders and status, traveling the same trade routes that once brought prosperity. Messina was just the beginning. Soon, the shadow of the plague would engulf all of Europe. No one could imagine that half the continent might perish in the catastrophe to come. To trace the Black Death's origins, we journey east along the Silk Road. The culprit, Yersinia pestis, a bacterium living in fleas, which thrived on black rats. Climate shifts forced rats from Asia into human settlements, hitching rides on caravans and ships. The Silk Road, once a highway for goods, became a superhighway for disease. In 1346, during the Mongol siege of Kaffa, plague-infected corpses were hurled over city walls, an early act of biological warfare. Genoese merchants fleeing Kaffa unwittingly carried the plague home, rats and fleas hidden in their ships. Ship rats, excellent stowaways, brought the disease to every port. A single flea bite could doom a sailor, turning trading vessels into floating coffins. Once ashore, the plague spread with terrifying speed, following trade and travel routes across Europe. Within days, victims developed fever, chills, and the telltale black buboes, swollen, dying lymph nodes. Death often came within a week, sometimes in just a day if the infection reached the bloodstream or lungs. Pneumonic plague, spread by coughing, made crowded cities especially deadly. Medieval people, ignorant of germs, blamed bad air, divine wrath, or planetary misalignment. Fear and superstition flourished as medicine failed. The true cause, fleas and bacteria, remained a deadly mystery. The horror was not just the suffering, but the speed and certainty of death. No one was safe, and no one understood why. Desperate for answers, society turned to medicine, faith, and fear. Doctors, guided by ancient theories, tried bloodletting and herbal concoctions, useless against the plague. The iconic beaked mask, stuffed with herbs, was meant to ward off bad air, but offered little real protection. As medicine failed, people flocked to churches, praying for mercy, or joined flagellant processions, whipping themselves in hopes of divine forgiveness. Fear bred suspicion and violence. Jewish communities were scapegoated and massacred. Social bonds shattered. Families abandoned the sick and the dying were left alone. The plague exposed the limits of knowledge and the fragility of society. Panic and superstition spread as fast as the disease itself. The world seemed to unravel, one death at a time. The Black Death killed up to 60% of Europe's population. Tens of millions lost. Cities emptied, villages vanished, and mass graves became the norm. With so many dead, fields went untended, famine followed, and economies collapsed. The constant tolling of church bells for the dead drove survivors to despair. Art and literature became obsessed with death, the danse macabre a grim reminder of mortality. Survivors lived with deep psychological scars, haunted by loss and uncertainty. The old world was gone, replaced by silence and fear. Death was the great equalizer, sparing no one. The great mortality left a legacy of trauma and transformation. Out of tragedy, Europe changed forever. With labor scarce, peasants gained power, demanding better wages and freedom. Feudalism began to crumble. Land use shifted, economies adapted, and a new middle class emerged. The Church's authority waned as prayers went unanswered, sparking skepticism and new ideas. These changes paved the way for the Renaissance and Reformation. Today, science has unraveled the plague's secrets. DNA from ancient victims confirms its cause. The disease still exists, but antibiotics make it curable. The Black Death is a lesson in the power of disease and the resilience of humanity. From devastation came progress, and the world was never the same.